We welcome you to episode number 11 of the best podcast available. I'm Jason Gibbs alongside Andrew Gribble, and a happy Friday to you and yours. Yesterday, a brief practice. We figured we would combo practice recaps with Friday's practice, and then we moved inside because we had to build an ark if we stayed outside. And practice the last couple days, and frankly, the last 6 days, Gribble has been a challenge at best.
I mean, this week has been a roller coaster ride every day since Sunday, and I just think that there's been some positive to come out of this, and there's been a lot of good things going, but it's just been there's been something new every day that has basically made the schedule that was written on paper at the beginning of training camp worth the paper it's written on. And I think that they've had to adjust the schedule a lot, and I don't know. I mean, Gibbs, you look at the weather more than I do, but I don't know if we're out of the woods for Saturday yet either. It's not looking great, but we'll see if the team gets in a as scheduled 2:30 practice on Saturday before heading to the stadium on Sunday.
Yeah, and frankly, they need to get it in based on all the adversity and the things that have gone on. This team needs a few more reps, and we're 2 weeks out, and we're approaching the point in time where it's time to start installing. It's time to start preparing for the Baltimore Ravens as much as it is getting ready for the 2020 NFL season.
Well, and I mean, this is something we maybe haven't talked about as much now as we would in previous years, but you know, you're 8 days away from cutting your roster down. I mean, these are the important decisions. I feel like we haven't even talked about that kind of looming thing to begin with. We're talking more Ravens because it's so close, but you know, you're making some quick decisions here on some guys on the roster. So you got to get a look at those guys, make sure you have your right 53. Let's see who's probably going to be healthy for the Ravens game, who's probably not going to be healthy for the Ravens game. And then you got to show that continuous improvement, which I will say these last two practices, obviously we didn't watch what happened on Friday. We might have to go to Jeff McDaniel for his analysis on today's practice. But, you know, the two practices that have happened, as truncated and as adjusted as they've been, seem to have been a step in the right direction for this team, which I think is good to see after maybe some offensive inconsistency Tuesday leading into the break.
All right, let's start with those practices. The one we did see on Thursday, obviously the practice cut in half to about an hour to spend the rest of the time brainstorming ways to affect change in the community in the wake of Jacob Blake's shooting by a police officer in Wisconsin. And I'll tell you what, the guys spent a lot of time talking, and not just the players, coaches, front office. A lot of people were talking. We weren't sure, frankly, if practice was even going to happen on Thursday. And the guys took the field, and practice was moved back about 15 minutes, a nice hour of work under a lot of adverse conditions. And boy, they did get in some good work. And let's start off with the two people that really kind of shown the most, Baker Mayfield and Hollywood Higgins. Going back to, you know, Baker's rookie year, Hollywood was almost like his security blanket. Boy, does that seem like that's coming into play here the further we go into training camp.
Yeah, and I think it's good because we honestly, those first 5 practices, we didn't see or hear much of Hollywood Higgins at all. And then these last 5 or 6, he's been active. And I think I would just say that practice as a whole, you know, we saw more touchdowns in that practice than maybe we've seen in the past few combined, whether it was in the red zone. You saw touchdowns outside of red zone drills. It just looked like what you wanted this offense to look like. And I think we've seen good things from the running game the entire time. But now when you start to see some good things happening through the air, then you start to see what the vision of this offense really could be. And I think that's what was encouraging to see, and it really did seem like the offense came back with maybe a refocused mindset, or maybe they're working on things that they really are good at and honing those things in going into the season. So I liked what I saw, and I think that based on how the mood of Kevin Stefanski today, I think that it was another good day for that group. And the thing that we're going to start wondering about with this offense is you've got a lot of wide receivers on this team, and all of them seem to be add something to the mix. Same with tight ends. I mean, those are two position groups that are going to have a lot of tough decisions to make in these next coming couple days, because you've seen plays made by a variety of different guys, and you can make a case for nearly all of those guys in the rooms right now as they're constructed on why they belong on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, that's the wide receiver room. That battle is, I think it's going to come down literally to maybe that Thursday or Friday prior to cut down day. I mean, and I got a feeling there's going to be a pretty good discussion in that wide receiver room with the front office, with the coaches, when it's time for cut down day as to who stays and who goes, the way that this continues to play out. Donovan Peoples-Jones, a big touchdown from Case Keenum, had to leave again, though, at the end of practice. And that's twice this week he's had to leave at the end of practice, heat-related. Little concerning that he's not able to stick it out through the entire practice. But, you know, again, your goal is to be ready on September 13th and not necessarily at the end of August.
Yeah, and it's been good to see him out in action. And I think when you have the head coach praising him the way he did today about kind of his versatility, how they can line him up anywhere on offense, and when he mentioned the special teams factor as well, that's going to be significant when it comes to his place on this roster. So he's done a lot to prove himself as a 6th-round pick, and we've seen enough that when you're a 6th-round pick, even when you're from Michigan and even when you're a 5-star recruit, you're not guaranteed a roster spot. And I think that what he's shown over these last couple of weeks is, you know, he's in pretty good position to at the minimum gain one of those and then have a role in this team moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's done a nice job. It's nice to see KHADAREL HODGE back, and we'll get into Friday's practice here in a little bit. But you made a great point when we were talking just kind of through things for today with KHADAREL HODGE. If you leave, and he had to leave for personal reasons, and it was away from the team, you're not getting tested daily. You got to start the whole process over again, and that's why he hasn't been here for as long.
Yeah, and I think the thing, he was also another guy that got praised by Stefanski today, and I think he was playing really well when he was here, and I think that it shouldn't be forgotten that he's probably one of the best special teams players on the entire team. So I think he's in pretty good standing right now, but he's shown that he's more than just a special teams guy. And I think that he's been impressive, and again, he's another guy that you throw in that wide receiver mix, and then you're like, what do you do with these other guys? Because it's a loaded group, and you brought in Damian Willis from the Bengals, claimed him via waivers, so the group has only grown, and it's grown even more with Damian Ratley returning to the field. So you've got a lot of options and some tough decisions to make. And again, all this said, this is an offense where we don't see a ton of wide receivers on the field at the same time. So from what we've seen so far, you know, that could change. I mean, so it's just going to be interesting to see how the math works out in the end with this.
Yeah. No Greedy at practice again with a shoulder injury. Njoku was back. Nice to see Money Mitch back on the field, as well as Terrence Mitchell really fighting through things, and got some praise on Friday from his position coach, Jeff Howard. Yeah,
and he's a player that's going to become incredibly valuable here with this secondary being as banged up as it is. I think Greedy Williams is day-to-day, but at the same time, you got to start preparing for that game. And Terrence Mitchell, again, as he's proven these last couple of years, is a great backup plan to have at those positions. So if he's back and healthy, you feel a lot better about that secondary. My eyes are just going to keep being focused on the slot with what's going on with MJ Stewart and what's going on and Kevin Johnson's status moving forward. Is what do you do at that position that is obviously so valuable to the secondary? That, to me, remains unclear at this point.
Yeah, something to watch here over the coming days and the next 10 days to a week to see what Andrew Berry and company do in that spot. The Browns did sign a reserve center, and they had signed earlier in the week Curtis Weaver from Boise State. They ended up putting him on IR with a foot injury. So you would look at that and you would say, you just signed a guy to put him on IR. But this is a guy that, you know, I mean, has a pretty good pedigree. Came to the Dolphins, was dinged up. They let him go. The Browns got him. The Browns immediately put him on IR, and as Nathan Zagura on Browns Daily said, it's almost like getting another draft pick. This kid, the Browns are pretty high on Curtis Weaver here.
Yeah, and he had a really successful finish to his career at Boise State. Really super productive pass rusher, and clearly with the injury in Miami and maybe with some other things. I mean, we just don't know their decision-making process that went into him being waived. And clearly, if no one had claimed him, he would have reverted back to their roster on as waived injured. But the Browns, I guess, were among multiple teams to put in a claim for him. And it really is, like you said, an extra draft pick. It's really a kind of a no-risk lottery ticket. I mean, it's one of those where you get him in your building, get him in your facility, get him acquainted with the coaching staff, get him just up to speed with everything, and then give it a shot in 2021. No pressure. I mean, it's one of those where you can never have enough guys at those positions, and I think it was a smart move by Andrew Berry.
All right, so moving on to today's practice, one we didn't get to watch except for Jeff McDaniel. The team in full pads, were you surprised that they moved inside and yet still were in full pads?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. They've probably reached the point where they've got enough allotted into the schedule where you might as well put them in pads and you can do some kind of contact. And I know the field house is obviously compromised at the moment, so it's a much shorter field than it is even in the past. But I guess there's enough you could probably do. You could probably still do a lot of goal line. You probably still do a lot of red zone. So I imagine that took up the bulk of the focus, and you could still do contact drills with that. So I think that you just wanted to make the most of the day, go the full 2 hours after only practicing for an hour, and just get this team as much football hours as possible. And I think as much as you can simulate the real thing at this point, you got to take it.
Players who did not practice today due to injury: linebacker Adrian Claiborne with a groin, corner Kevin Johnson, obviously with the liver, but he's out there on the field with his teammates. Carl Joseph, Jarvis Landry sat out today, still, working his way back from his offseason surgery. Corner MJ Stewart with the hamstring, JC Tretter obviously with that knee, Gritty Williams with the shoulder, and for obvious reasons, Mac Wilson down for a little bit as well. Coach, after practice, was talking about Tretter, was asked about Tretter, and he said, we'll make a decision on Tretter game week, but Nick Harris has been solid. I guess I heard that, and alarm bells went off in my head that we're even discussing having to wait to make a decision on Tretter. Here's a guy I think we all thought was going to be back, and I think will still end up being back, but was it concerning at all to hear that from him?
Well, it's one of those things where you got to prepare for anything at this point. I imagine at this point,
the way things have gone.
Yeah, you want Nick Harris in the mindset that, hey, be ready to be out there when it starts to matter. And I think that JC is obviously in a good spot where you probably can get him out there without getting him a ton of practices, but I would imagine you want him out there for at least a couple during the game week and the preparation for the Ravens, just to get him back up to speed and get him back into at least the closest thing resembling playing shape at this point. And I think that, so now when the dates get a little bit closer and closer, the deadline is getting nearer and nearer, you got to start getting your rookie prepared. Not that he hasn't already been preparing, but you want to get him locked in to at least preparing for the Ravens and getting them on his mind and getting him ready for what would be a huge moment for him and huge moment for the Browns to get their rookie out there. But hopefully you don't have to face that scenario. But at some point here, you're going to want to see JC doing something with the team to kind of get you in the feeling that he can be out there for week one.
Yeah, no question about it. So offense, defense, they did go at it for a little bit today. They had a full 2-hour practice, and look forward to seeing hopefully some of the footage of that at some point. But Browns back on the field on Saturday. We'll preview that and the week ahead coming up in just a few minutes. But right now, time for our interview of the day. And it continues in our Meet the Coach segment as Browns wide receiver coach and pass game coordinator Chad O'Shea had a chance to sit down to chat with us about a number of things, including his wide receiver room, Kevin Stefanski, and the challenges of a new wide receiver like a kid like Willis coming in toward the end of camp and how much he has to make up and how quickly he has to do so. Have a watch and have a listen. And here on the best podcast available, joined now by the pass game coordinator and wide receiver coach Chad O'Shea in his first year with the Cleveland Browns. Coach, appreciate a few minutes of your day. And I've got to ask, wide receiver coach, I understand. I know what that is. Pass game coordinator. What exactly is that and what goes into that side of things?
Yeah, I think the one thing is we have such a great offensive staff that has been in so many different systems, is regardless of whatever our titles are, it's really a collective effort for us to get to the point where we go to the field and we install the scheme. And that's certainly the way it's going to be during the year. We have so many good coaches on offense, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the guys I work with. So regardless of what our titles are, we work really well together and we contribute each of us to the game plan and what we do on the field. So, that's what's most important is that we work well together. And again, we have a lot of expertise from a lot of different systems, and that sure is beneficial to us offensively.
I was going to say guys from all over the place, from Coach Callahan to Coach Stump and all over the place. A lot of expertise with Alex Van Pelt and, of course, Kevin Stefanski, who you were with in Minnesota for a brief period of time from 06 to 08, I believe. What's it been like, especially now with the guys back in the building, the virtual off season? We know how well that went for everybody, but how has it been to have the guys back in the building now going on 3+ weeks?
Yeah, it's been really an exciting time for us. We've been in the virtual program, obviously, prior to this, and that was beneficial. We made a lot of progress, but now is when we really can really put the pedal down and drive as fast as we can and try to get a lot of these things accomplished on the field that we need to. And, it's just been an exciting time for us because we actually get them on the grass and work with them individually and as a group and see how they come together. And we know how important it is to have everybody on the same page. And there's no way to get everybody on the same page unless you're out there doing it on a daily basis. The virtual program, obviously, we made that the best we could and really got a lot out of that, but there's no substitute for a team being on the field together, working closely with the other positions.
All right. You had mentioned it, I believe, on Browns Live. When the pads came on, fundamentals were the goal. And have you seen some good fundamental work from these guys 10 practices into this 2020 season?
Yeah, I think that's what's most important right now is to go out there and see where our fundamentals are. And I think that what we've learned is some of the issues that maybe we need to work on fundamentally. We've seen those improvements made, whether it be within, a couple days to 3-day period. The players have worked hard and tried to be very coachable, I would say. So that's something that's been real encouraging is the progress in the fundamentals. I don't think you can realistically have those fundamentals, obviously, with the loss of the off season and those things that we didn't have the opportunity to do. Their fundamentals are going to be an issue, and we made a lot of progress in the fundamentals here in the last few days, and I think there's plenty of work to be done still in that area.
What else are you working especially hard with your guys, especially as we get ready for this third grouping of practices and getting closer to the season here, about 2.5 weeks out?
Yeah, I think one of the areas is just being on the same page. Take, for example, the pass game, how important it is, the dynamics between the quarterback and the skilled players to be on the same page. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of doing that goes into that. So I think that's one of the things we're really concentrating and focusing on is just continuing to be on the same page. And then, as we look as an offensive as a whole, we're looking at now some situational football, getting into some of those situations that are so critical in the game. You install your offense, and now we're moving forward into some of this situational work that's definitely going to come up, obviously, early in the season for us. Whether we do well in those or we don't is going to be the difference in the way it goes for us early.
What are your takeaways from this wide receiver room through the first few weeks? So much is made of Odell and Jarvis, and we know how great those players are. But what about your room as a whole? Have you liked here to the first?
Yeah, I think it's been really competitive. Let's call it those other guys after our top two. It's been competitive. They're all trying to play well within their roles, and I think their roles right now is what they're making it. You know, that's what we've kind of stressed to them is what it's going to be for you is what you're going to make it on the field, and it's certainly been competitive. You know, there's nothing that's set in stone right now. This is an ongoing evaluation, and the good thing is that we have a competitive situation. There's a lot of guys that are after the 1 and 2 receiver spots that are good candidates to contribute to what we're doing offensively.
What about a guy that just joined this football team, Damian Willis, a guy that late today the Browns officially picked up off of the waiver wire from Cincinnati? A guy like that coming in 3 weeks in, you know, we talk about the challenges that rookies face trying to make the team with a virtual offseason. What are the challenges a guy like that faces that you're bringing into the room basically halfway through camp here?
Yeah, I mean, it's very challenging. It's been a very challenging year for the rookie class, obviously with some of the unique circumstances and challenge that they've dealt with, but now you have a veteran player. But I'll say this, I mean, we've only been at this a few weeks as far as our players on our roster right now. We haven't had a full off season together on the field. So as far as the field work, you know, you look at it, there's only a few weeks ahead that our guys are than bringing somebody newly acquired on our team right now. So that's one way to look at it. Obviously, you can't make up for all the virtual time and the time spent, you know, whether it wasn't on the field or not. So, you know, it's a great challenge, but certainly there's been success stories in the NFL of guys coming on rosters late and really making the most out of their opportunity. And, you know, we're acquiring guys for a reason that we think they can help us at that time. And certainly that's what we try to do with our roster. And Andrew Berry's done a great job of, you know, putting us in an opportunity to be successful with some of the players that we acquire, whether it's now or whether it was through the draft.
In Minnesota with Kevin Stefanski, what was your relationship like? And obviously it's blossomed and stayed in good contact over these years since you were there in 06 and 08. How have you seen him grow from that time in Minnesota to now being the head coach of the Browns?
Yeah, it's been really awesome to see that. I mean, he's somebody that I've always first of all had a tremendous amount of respect for as a person. You know, it didn't take long to recognize that he was going to be great in whatever he chose to do at the time. You know, he wasn't in a coaching position. It was more of an administrative role. But whatever Kevin's taken on, he's been great at because of the attributes that he has, you know, first and foremost as a person. And, you know, he's a highly intelligent guy that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, that I think works very well with people. And you know, I can't say enough great things about working with him previously. And then so far, my experience has been great here with him. I certainly respect and admire how he's handled the team and provided outstanding leadership through some different times, I would say, in a first-year head coach's, you know, experience on that. But I really respect what he's done. I've respected him a lot as a person in the past, and really am honored and humbled that I have an opportunity to work with him.
All right, Coach, we'll get you out of here with this one. 18 years in the NFL as a coach. Your teams have won 12 division titles, 5 conference championships, 3 Super Bowls. You've also worked with 2 of the best in the business, and Dick Vermeil in Kansas City and Bill Belichick, obviously, in New England. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten? Maybe it's not from one of those 2, but what's the best piece of advice you've gotten when it comes to coaching in the NFL?
Yeah, I think that both, you know, I was fortunate to be around Coach Vermeil and Coach Belichick, and they share something in common in that they always want to play to the strengths of the players that you have in the building. You know, don't try to schematically do something that maybe is not a fit for the guys that you're currently coaching that might have worked in a past year with other players. So I think it's very important to find out what the players do well. Don't sit around and talk about what they can't do. Let's talk about what they can do and how we can utilize them to their best abilities, obviously that would influence what we do schematically. So I certainly think we've taken that approach here. We have a lot of good players in this building that do a lot of things well. And let's find out what they do well, and let's play to their strengths. And that was some advice that I know both of those head coaches that I work for share, and I certainly have learned a lot from that.
Coach, we appreciate the time. I know you're busy. I know everybody's busy here as we sprint to the finish line, otherwise known as the starting line of the 2020 NFL season. Wish you the best, and I hope you and your family are doing well during this absolutely crazy time. Thank you again, and continued success.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Want to thank Coach for his time, and boy, I'll tell you what, here's a guy, and I just talked to him about it. You know, he coached under Dick Vermeil, coached under Bill Belichick. Guy has a wealth of coaching knowledge. I mean, we talk so much about Bill Callahan and the expertise that he has, and some of the other coaches like Stump, who's been around for a long time. A lot of these guys come from successful programs and have coached under some really successful people.
Yeah, and it's good coaching pedigree to have, and all of those things I think become even more important when you have a first-year head coach. You want to get as much experience in your building, and I think Stefanski did a great job just lining up his staff with guys that he was, one, familiar with, and two, with a lot of different backgrounds, different styles of coaching, and really, most importantly, a lot of success in that group.
Yeah, no question. Looking forward to seeing what Coach O'Shea can do with that wide receiver room. And they're going to be under the microscope here for the next 7 or 8 days leading up to Cutdown Day. And Cutdown Day is coming quickly, as Gribble did say. Gribbs, the 3 biggest things you think this team needs to accomplish over those next 7 to 8 days prior to Cutdown Day? What are some of the goals that this team needs to be putting in place as we get closer to that date in Baltimore?
Well, I think first off, you got to figure out if you have any ongoing competitions for starting positions. Let's get those resolved. You know, we haven't really talked a ton about those, but I think you maybe have one opening or so, or your linebacker room, we still haven't really gotten truly settled. So I'd like to see maybe that gets settled out, and then maybe let's get a clearer picture of what's happening at corner, if who's going to be available in that regard. And I just think, for me, what we've seen, I think we've seen the defense put together a lot of good practices. I think we just need to see the offense continue to keep up that pace. And I think that's the second and most important thing. And then third is be healthy. Try to avoid, I mean, this is really not something you can actively do, but let's try to avoid some of these injuries, get the guys back as much as possible, and just enter week 1 giving yourself the best possible shot with your best roster, because every coach says that this is the healthiest the team is going to be all season. So you gotta find a way to get the healthiest possible roster out there for week 1, because it's not going to get better. You're only going to feel more tired and more banged up.
I want to go back to the linebacker spots. I know one guy that has stood out a little bit, Sione Takitaki, continuing to make some plays. I know he had an interception in Thursday's practice. Continues to make some plays and turn some heads a little bit. And he's a guy that's clearly stepped up in the wake of Mack Wilson's injury.
Yeah, he's been active. And I think that's been the thing you want to see. And I think he was in a position where he was going to be a major contributor even before Mack went down, but now it becomes even more important. So I think that he becomes a big player to watch. Him and B.J. Goodson, we've seen out there a lot, making plays and being productive. And then you wonder what's happening when they go to 3 linebackers. Is it Tay Davis or is it Jacob Phillips? I mean, those are a couple players that seem to be out there a bunch alongside a host of undrafted or very lightly experienced players. So we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where I couldn't probably put together a depth chart right now. We'll get a depth chart at some point, but that's the one position group right now that seems to be a little unsettled, whereas everything else seems to be about the same with what we expected so far.
Yeah, I think the battles this week are going to be more along the lines of who's that second line of defense. If one of your main starters go down, I think there are a lot of positions up for grabs at that second and third tier levels.
Yeah, and that's again, this is the stuff we would usually entertain ourselves with at this time of year, because we are so sick of training camp. We'd sat through 3 preseason games at this point. Like, we would be talking about rostered players 48 through 90 right now on the roster, and we just haven't even gotten to that conversation yet because it's a different calendar. So I almost feel like we're not talking about these guys the way we used to, and not scrutinizing who's on the third team or the fourth team and things like that. So these are decisions that have to be made pretty quickly, and they're doing it without preseason games, and doing it without really. Another thing to consider is doing this without seeing other teams play preseason games and having a gauge on who might be on the waiver wire. I mean, this is a whole new ball game for roster management that we're going to have to really just see unfold before our eyes in a way that just hasn't happened before.
Well, and not only that, but teams are only really cutting 10, 11 guys, maybe 12 guys.
Well, they're still going to have to cut 25 originally or so, because then you would expect them to go into your practice squad.
Correct.
They're going to be available there for a day or two. So the number on the waiver wire is going to be just as big, or maybe 10 less than it usually is. But odds are you're going to want to bring back most of those guys.
Yeah.
But there still are going to be some claimable players on the market that honestly teams are just going to probably be taking flyers on and hoping it works out for the best without getting to see a moment of what they've been able to do in the month of August.
I feel like guys could get paid for that. I mean, like, hey, like if you're interested, I've got a couple other teams interested. Sight unseen, maybe guys getting a little overpaid.
Yeah.
Into the 2020 NFL.
It'll be interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see because usually there's a lot of waiver claims that day after roster cuts. Maybe there's way less this year just because you can't just claim a guy that you haven't seen.
Yeah, you're
to claim a guy that you haven't seen, you've got to cut a guy that you've seen, and that's always the tricky thing.
Yeah, and I think that will, guys starting to get cut will hurt the guys that still haven't signed with anybody, because again, you're looking at a 3 to 5 day process to get into a system if you haven't been in one.
Yeah.
So I think that'll play a factor in who gets signed, who doesn't get signed, re-signed, all of those things. So it's going to be a very interesting next 10 plus days as we count down to September 13th and that game in Baltimore. Thanks to Chad O'Shea for his time. Thank you to Jeff McDaniel, as always, for his help. For Andrew Gribble, I'm Jason Gibbs. Make sure you like and subscribe today to the best podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/Browns. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We are back with you on Saturday. This is the best podcast available.